Hey everyone. So hopefully I think we are live and happy to see everyone who's joining us from around the globe. Let's give a few minutes for everyone to join in. I see that the rooms are filling in. And while we wait, we can also jump into the chat and everyone can mention from where they're joining right now. I think we'll be able to start in a few minutes. And I'm joining actually currently from Vilnius, Lithuania, and we have three wonderful speakers here as well. So we have Chantal joining us from South Africa. We have Maiva joining us from Spain, Barcelona. So I think that's heart of Spain nearly, right? I don't want to, because I think Spain is very have their own opinions. I think about each city, which is central, right? And of course we have Dwayne joining us from Canada, Toronto. So yeah, happy to have everyone. I think we can start, and I think everyone will catch up. So basically, again, welcome everyone to joining, Whatagraph's webinar about how to move from chaos to clarity, and how actually agencies are making the shift from reactive to proactive reporting. So basically, been talking about myself. So basically, from my experience talking with thousands of agencies, I've been in this industry for more than 10 years already, and previously marketing agency owner myself, now running Whatagraph for nearly 10 years. And I saw a big pattern, that especially I think recently it's very much visible that reactive reporting is finally being replaced by way more proactivity, way bigger proactivity by agencies. And I think that's great. I think that brings a bit of edge of getting to know your customers better, understanding the changing goals of them, and I think that the relationship just improves rather than not. And I remember my times in agencies, it was a bit more different, how every agency was doing that, and we were very proactive at the time, and sometimes even customers were like, oh whoa, why are you calling us that often? But I think after some time they started to notice that it's a collaboration together rather than a one-way street. We came in, we ordered services from you, and give me the results. So I think this iterative process is very much important. And today actually with our panelists, we're going to cover what caused them to switch more from reactivity to proactivity. So how they did that change, and how they managed to hold the shift with customers and their team to a bit different way of work, let's say. And I think what everyone wants to learn is actually how that all improved both relationships and performance. And yeah, again, I want to introduce everyone who is participating here. Thanks everyone joining us from various parts of the globe. I see Alison wrote that she's joining from Ireland, so welcome Ireland. I know only one word in Irish, which is ishkaba, I guess, which is whiskey, I think. And that's it. That's my Irish language, which is very actually hard but beautiful to hear. And we have Sue joining us from England, so that's UK joining us from the island, and I think one of the largest ones, right? All right. So I want to start with Chantal. So Chantal, please introduce yourself a bit and tell us about Metis a bit as well.
Hi everyone. So firstly, I'm so glad to hear about the word that says whiskey, because that's definitely one of my most favorite things from Ireland. So Chantal, I've been running my agency. We actually just turned 15 now in June. So I think for a lot of people, I always say like running an agency, you can always times it by 7. It's like dog years. So definitely one of the older agencies around. I think we've really gone through it all. Before reporting was automated and we still had to do everything manually. So yes, we're a performance marketing agency specializing in mainly paid media. And been a Whatagraph client also for many years as well. So been nice to grow with the team. And I'm from Cape Town, South Africa. And definitely from my side, I'm not somebody who does the billable work, but as an agency owner, it's always good to have a good line of sight of what's happening. And I hope to share that today.
Yeah, thanks for joining. Dwayne, would love to hear a bit word from you. And Dwayne is coming from Canada as well.
Yeah, I'm from Toronto, so kind of in the center of Canada politically, but not really the center of Canada geography. And yeah, we're a paid ad agency, so we only do like Google, Meta, stuff like that. We've got clients mostly in the UK, but a bit across Europe and North America. And I think at the end of the day, when you want to try to be more proactive, I think it's all about understanding the client's sort of point of view a little bit and asking better questions. Because if you're understanding the client's point of view and you're asking better questions, it's easier to figure out what you need to build data on or what you need to work towards an ad account. Or even if you're doing like email marketing or SEO or influencer, like understand that stuff helps you sort of just run better campaigns regardless of like where the campaign is run. And that's in a nutshell.
Yeah, thanks for joining. And definitely last but not least, Maiva. So actually, I think it would be also great to hear, maybe you have a story about your name, because for me, it's definitely one of the first times when I heard your name. I think it's very beautiful.
Thank you. You mean my name or my brand name?
Your name.
Oh,
exactly.
It's like, what story?
Yeah.
So my name means welcome.
All right.
In Tahitian. Yeah. So I don't have any ancestry there, but it is. It was a French colony, so the name is not super common, but kind of more known in France. And I'm half French, so my mom picked it. She read it in a book, and I hope that I honor it by being a welcoming person.
When you said it, I think it's actually, I think, very much matches your personality for me.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, so I'm really happy to be here with all of you guys. Thank you for inviting me. I run Flying Cat, which is an SEO and content agency. We don't do any paid ads, just strictly SEO, but full service. I've had teams of many sizes. I've had quite a range of experiences since I started the agency 5 years ago. And every time I was on sales calls, the whole 5 years, I really found it interesting how when a prospect was changing agencies, one of the biggest complaints was always, they're not proactive enough. They disappear. I don't know what's going on with the account. I remember it must have been 6 months or 1 year in when we had one of our first clients, and one of his complaints was, I don't know what you guys have been working on, because he was not the contact person that we had. Yeah. So we were confident in thinking he was the contact person. And I was like, what can we do about this? And then I had a dream that was I literally dreamt of this beautiful spreadsheet that would be the deliverables tracker and like the reporting center. And then we created it, and we've been kind of using something like that ever since. So yeah, I'm excited to discuss this, because for me, it's not just results, but also internal tracking of work, because you can easily fall behind and not even realize. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I think that's a great story, and I think it's nice that you share also a lot of experiences, and what I love about his setup, it's very different in terms of what you guys work with, and we have like e-commerce, we have PPC, we have SEO, so I think it's a full deck, and I hope that we'll share a lot of great experiences from you guys. So yes, I think I would love to dive in straight away into the topic. And I want to start with asking you a very simple question. So let's start maybe with Dwayne. I would want you to recall a moment, when you had the time when you were like, okay, we're underperforming on this, and actually that was too late already, when you just needed to go to present to the customer. Maybe the customer came up, and then you were like, oh, all right, I'm a bit behind with the goals.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, I think it can come in many forms for different companies, agencies, regardless of what size you are. But, I think, this is probably like a couple Christmases ago. We had a we're still young, but like a young team in the sense that like someone new on the company. And I'm like, you know, at least in North America, you know, people don't generally order things after December 18th, because after December 18th, you just can't get the package in time for Christmas. There's too many people in America, too many people ordering online. And so I told the person on the team, like, look, you need to like either tone down budget or figure out what you're going to do, because we're not going to see a lot of sales from December 18th to the 22nd. And then of course the 20th comes around and they haven't done anything. And I think it's like a Tuesday and Christmas is like days away. And so I step in and make a change and then have a whole conversation with them about it. Because, you know, from my perspective, the client's going to freak out if it's the end of the week and they've spent, you know, gobs and gobs of money. And sometimes it can just be where, you know, I always say it always takes 1 or 2 days for things to sort of fall off the rails, so to speak, in North American slang. And so it often happens just when you're not expecting it, because, you know, you took her off the ball because it's a very, very busy time and there's lots of things going on. And so we try to build a report in the sense that, how do we have a reporting kind of be like a second pair of eyes? And that could take the form of, you know, Whatagraph, it could take the form of Looker Studio, it could take a form of alerts in GA4, but building a report to kind of be like a second pair of eyes to tell you that something's going wrong and you need to like batter down the hatches if it's a storm, or you need to like make a change today before things get even worse than they are.
Yeah, I can imagine. I think especially this period of time, you know, when we have, you know, Black Friday and, you know, and Christmas, all the frenzy. I think that's I forgot how some agents are actually naming that period, but I think is the most intense when nobody's allowed to go even on vacation sometimes, especially if you're running PPC, you know. And so that's it. And I'm not even talking about e-commerce. I think e-commerce is like 24/7 for, you know, a few weeks for sure.
Yeah, it's not great. It's
Yeah.
not great.
In one hand, right? But
Yeah.
from another hand, you know, if you're, you know, doing well, so I think, you know, that all the commissions flow in. It's also pretty great.
Yeah.
All right, yeah. So that's great. Thanks for sharing. And what about you, Chantal? You know, maybe you have same or different point of view or situation when it happened.
Yeah, I think that's a bit of a different sort of different angle to it. So I think for me, when I realized there was just an issue in regards to understanding where accounts stood overall, was so every Monday our leadership team gets together and we have a company scorecard that we look at. So each person in the leadership team has metrics that they've got to, or KPIs that they've got to speak to, of which one of them is client performance. So what is the percentage of our clients that are on track to hit goals versus not hit goals? And we obviously have a sort of goal that we want that to be, generally speaking. And what I noticed is that there was no source of truth to actually tell us what that number is. So that number came from a gut feel as opposed to a sort of black and white document that went like, these are the clients that are in the green, and these are the clients that are in the red. And just thinking of that just took it down one step further. I was like, well, then how do we know which clients we might need to step in and prioritize and maybe give a bit more guidance or relook at the strategy with, or whatever the solution is. But like how we alerted on who to be focusing on for that particular week. So as sort of somebody who's not necessarily, I guess, in the weeds doing the work, like how am I ready to be informed on where my company stood? And I think with that immediately lent itself to client retention as well, right? So generally, if things are going well, clients are staying. If they're not staying. So
Yeah.
as a business owner, I just want to know what my risk was. What does the future hold as well? So that was for me the biggest indicator that we needed a solution. Happy to also go into the solution if you want.
Yeah, I think we'll be able, I think, to transition into the solutions as well. I think it would be definitely interesting to hear, you know, because as far as I know, you know, because we had a chat, you know, with you guys previously, and what I love, you know, that it's actually interesting, you know, how everyone has a different, you know, way how to solve things, and I think it's also very great to be able to share that, and you know, I think it's wonderful that we can actually go through that. So for me, it's like, I think now would be great to cover, you know, the what was the moment, you know, when you found out that, you know, something needs to be done. So I think it's also great, you know, what we understood, you know, Chantal was looking from the perspective of internal, first of all, you know, like orientation, where they're sitting currently with the goals and with the customers. And first of all, I think it's great that you were thinking, how you're going to look like in the end of the period with the customer. So yeah, so thanks for sharing. And I know also from our previous conversations with Maiva, you had very interesting story to tell about your a bit of a screw up story. I can't say like screw up story, but it was a big realization moment, I guess, which I really loved.
Yeah, so SEO is a little different, as I think everybody here knows, where I feel like performance marketing, I mean, I've never worked in performance marketing, but I feel like the goals are pretty set. You have how much money am I going to spend and how much money am I going to get out of this? And then that's how it's performing. Where SEO, there's a lot of different things. And I think a trap that we all fall into is just looking at traffic and saying, is traffic growing? Which I think leads to random action finally at the end of the day. I'm not going to get into all the details of that, but we did fall into that trap initially earlier on of just, okay, we're just going to grow traffic. And so we didn't actually set concrete goals other than the client's goal is to grow traffic, by building cluster, whatever. It was just super vague. So we didn't really have these set goals. And we did have this client, which was a big client. And on paper, everything was going great. All the graphs were up and to the right when we were looking at organic traffic to the website. Since we were the SEO agency, we were saying, this is what we're doing. Fantastic. To the point where in our meetings, we would even say, this client is being so successful. How do we replicate this work that we're doing? It turns out the client wasn't happy. And as we dug more into it, we realized what we didn't actually look at was specifically the work we were doing and how that was performing, the pages we were building, the links we were building, the pages too. And as we looked at those pages 6 months later, literally took us 6 months to look at this, we realized those pages hadn't performed at all. And it was a lot of work, a lot of big investment from them, and it had not performed at all, even if the rest of the traffic was going up, but they were also doing SEO on their side. So when we looked at that, we realized we can't really attribute that growth to anything that we've done. And then suddenly it flipped from being, how do we duplicate this success, to we're in big trouble.
Yeah.
And how did we not realize that this was, how did nobody on the team ever think to look? And again, like Chantel said, it sounds like you do EOS. So we also do basically the same thing, where every week, and I was like, okay, how's the client doing? And everybody's saying, oh, this client's doing amazing, this and this and that. So I never bothered to look into it either. And this realization, well, it made me feel very silly, and learned a lot of lessons from it, which I guess we're going to get into today.
Yeah, and I think we can start with you, about the lessons, as we are on this topic already. So what was your lesson, and what changes you made in your process to prevent from happening again?
So I think the number one biggest lesson was setting clear goals. And now we're looking at milestones. We do 90-day milestones, which is probably the shortest time period that we can look at for SEO, where we can actually achieve anything. So we look at 90-day milestones, and we actually have to work our way backward from, okay, if they say they want more traffic, why do they want more traffic? At the end of the day, I'll tell you, nobody actually wants more traffic.
I think everyone wants leads, right?
Yeah.
They're not in leads, they actually want sales.
Yeah, exactly.
Sales.
Better.
So, but they'll all come to SEO agencies and say, we want to grow our traffic. That's what they always say. So it's always having to deconstruct that and then say, okay, so they want more leads. Okay, so what has worked before? what can we double down on? And now our goals end up being more specific to like a cluster of pages, like a set of pages are based on a data-driven hypothesis. We say, okay, in the next 90 days, we're going to try to move this batch of pages, which are all currently on page 2. We're going to try to move them to page 1 for a set of, I don't know, 5 to 10 keywords each, because I also learned, you know, 1 keyword is not really enough. This is going to change now, as well as AI is changing the way we measure success there, but that is what we've been doing up until now. But now we're going to have to rethink those KPIs. So we set these 90-day goals that have to be related to the SEO work that we're doing, but that shows our assumptions for why that translates into the end goal. And then these have to be things that we can measure and we look at every week. And ideally, by the end of the 90 days, I can say we hit 86% of this goal, because I know exactly what it was and it was so easily measurable. So we spent a lot of time figuring out how to set goals. This is not an easy thing for people to do, especially not SEOs, because it's not only difficult to think strategically, but it's also a part education with the client to teach them how they need to shift the way they think about goals, because they're going to think SEO is supposed to do one thing and they're going to keep saying that, but actually deep down inside they want another thing, and we have to extract that out of them. And so it was a lot of this training, a lot of learning, practicing, setting goals, and then tracking against those goals and continuing to remind the client that everything that we're doing is working towards this. Everything, we send a strategic email every Monday, a strategic path email, and say, this is what we're working on this week. Reminder, this is a 90-day goal. That's why we're doing this. Reminding them every single week.
Yeah, I love this.
Yeah, and then every week,
all a bit of a strategy as well with the customer.
It's so important, because we would say, here's the goal, and then by 30 days in, they don't remember what the goal is. Neither does the SEO strategist.
Yeah, I think it's something like you have to hear something 7 times before you remember it. So it's quite amazing. You spoke about goal setting, and I think that's what scared me the most when going deeper into, okay, now we're going to want to start tracking this against goals. What we found quite quickly was, firstly, our paid media specialist didn't necessarily know what the goal was. And then the thing that even scared me even more is when having the conversation with the client didn't know what the goal was.
Yep.
And so we were like, well, how do we ever know we are meeting expectations? I always say you need to walk into a meeting knowing if you're going to have like a happy client or a sad client on the other end. And with nobody knowing what the goal was, like, how were we ever going to be able to have that conversation of oh, this is great, we can learn from what this is, versus, oh, this is bad, like we need to change things up. So that was quite an eye opener for me.
And what you guys did for you know, like basically working on that one?
I think firstly with the goal part, it was just around education, and I think exactly what you're saying, it was about extracting information from the client, but through the right questions. I think, Dwayne, you spoke about that, like asking the right questions, how important that is, because a client might say something like, oh, I don't know, return on ad spend. And for me, I'm like, well, return on ad spend doesn't necessarily scale your business. New customers scale your business. I can go bid on your existing clients and just have a really good return on ad spend because they're going to buy from you anyways. So it's like, what is actually important for you? And therefore, what is the metric that we are looking at? And it was quite amazing, because I think immediately we would also have said something like sales, where now it's actually new client acquisition. That's become a key metric for a lot of our clients. Like, I want people's first purchase to be coming through this channel, or maybe there's particular campaigns for that. So it's really made us relook at what are the important KPIs for each particular business, and then be able to track against that. It's still a work in progress. This does not happen overnight to sort of roll out. And then we also love a good old spreadsheet. And so we've got our client sheets that are there. Luckily for paid, we're able to do weekly sort of performance as opposed to 90-day. So each week, you know, being able to complete what were the results against that metric for that week, and then knowing, are we on track for the month or not? And with that, becoming proactive on what do we need to change, as opposed to looking at a report a month later after results are done for.
Yeah, I think that productivity is very much engraved within your agency operations. As we already know from a bit, like working with you guys, and I think I love that. That productivity is definitely in place. And I think you mentioned that, I think previously when we had a chat with you, that it also brings a transparency with your customer. How you're doing, and I think it is easy to talk about when you're on a great performance already, but sometimes things don't go well, and I think that's when the time is when you need to have a transparency the most.
We actually had it was a call. It was last week Wednesday. I actually wrote an article on LinkedIn about this. I think it was today, about transparency, because it's been the key word I've heard in the last week of why clients are unhappy with their current agency. They just don't have transparency. And we had to go to a client last week because the results aren't good, and they're not where they're at. And they turned around to us and they just said, "I'd just like to commend you on just how transparent you are with us and how willing you were to take ownership of this and say, like, this is what we think has gone wrong." And they said that transparency is why we're not looking for another agency. We want to solve this with you. And so, I think for me, transparency has always been a key part of the business.
Yeah.
And I think, it's very hard to promise, always green results, right? So we are also, facing the market most of the time with our campaigns. And I think that's a bit, harder to, always go green. And sometimes I think that relationship needs to be built. And it would be lovely to hear Dwayne's perspective, because, I think you work with the most, like a very, very intense set of campaigns most of the time, because imagine, like e-commerce in general is a bit intense.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely can be intense some days. And yeah, Black Friday, obviously, holidays, sometimes spring, if spring is a busy time. I think both Chantal and me have brought interesting points, like, figuring out what the goals are, KPIs, whatever you want to call them with clients, I think is really important. And I think, one thing we try to get around that is we have like an intake form we have people fill out. So if you want to talk with me, you got to fill out the form and ask things like, what are your goals? What are you spending on ads? What countries? What's your brand? Yada, yada, yada. And I think having that's been helpful for me to sort of have the initial call with the client be about, like, is this goal realistic? Does this goal make sense? If you don't know what your goal is, can we like sit and talk about stuff? Even though it's technically not ROAS, some brands will include our fees into the ROAS calculation. Some brands will include their COGS into their ROAS calculation, depending on how they calculate. And so understanding sort of how they calculate it and getting their point of view has been really helpful, because then once we have their point of view, it's easier to build a report that they will understand. So we have a client who is based in the UK, but is from Hong Kong, but I think he's lived in the UK for like, let's say 30 or 50 years or something like that. But like when he writes reports, he doesn't put a comma sign anywhere. He just writes the full number. And I got to sit for a second and like figure out where the comma would normally go in his number. Is it 35,000? Is it 350,000? And so I think trying to understand sort of how clients would build a report themselves, or how it would show, like, is ROAS as a dollar? Is ROAS as a percentage? Is ROAS just as a number? And so part of that practice is figuring out how do you build a report that the client will understand and read is really helpful, even if it means I've got to like switch my brain slightly when I look at this client's report versus this other client's report. I think it's been really helpful. And then I think when people talk about transparency, clients want to know, like, what'd you do this month? What'd you do this week? Whatever it is. And so we've got like a monthly report. And so it's the beginning of June. So we'll do a monthly report for May and say, here's what we worked on May. And then based on May, here's the things we want to work on for June. And then here's any sort of insights, maybe observations, certain products sold last month, certain ad copy does really well. And so a lot of our reporting is like, how do we draw a clear line between the things we've done and the outcomes we see? And how do we show that in a way that you, the client, who may do it differently than the other 3 UK clients we have, can understand this report and read it? Because I think the challenge is you've got 2 kind of clients who don't read reports. So let's ignore those set for a second, and then clients who read reports. And so we want to make sure the clients who read the reports can understand the report we sent them, because I may love it, someone on our team may love it, but if the client can't understand it, it's basically a useless report that's just like a waste of everybody's time.
Yeah. Exactly. No, I love that you guys all share. I try to summarize in my mind, like a bit like what was the shared topic in general. And I think what I hear very, very well is like, first of all, I think setting the right goals for which both the agency and people working in the agency and then the customer themselves like align and have the same understanding about. So Dwayne mentioned about a great way, I think, of giving basically a form to the customer, and just like letting them to first submit what they imagine they need to work on, right? And then I think Chantel also, you mentioned that, like very accurately mentioning, and there's understanding those goals together with the customer and the people who will launch the campaigns. And then I would add as a follow-up is Maeva's way of showing a proactive kind of a status report and reminder about the strategy which you are working on, the goal, and the tactics on it. And then I would finish with transparency in all the fronts. So basically, if it's good or bad, be outspoken with the customers. And I would end with what you, Dwayne, just mentioned about based on the learnings from the previous period, last month or quarter, whatever it is, provide insights what you should be or going to work on in the coming period of time, which I think, again, all connects together with transparency, ownership, and full agency of what you're working with the customer. I think that is a very great recipe for success. And I would like now to dive in a bit, what kind of solutions do you use in place? What kind of way you do the goal tracking and like very, very down-to-earth explanation, right? Is it sheets? Is it what, maybe someone wants to start on that one.
Yeah, I'm happy to start.
I know what Chantel uses, of course.
Oh, we use a bit of I would say the process itself is a bit of a combination. So obviously we utilize Whatagraph for our reporting and for our dashboards, especially the new version of dashboards that have now come out. So we're busy building that out. So that's our place that we can go for the information. However, to take it and take that, and I mean, at that point, it's just really numbers sitting somewhere, right? There's an action that needs to be taken with it. So we have these sort of client sheets that have lots of different tabs in them, but one of the tabs is a performance, weekly performance tab that gets filled out, and you have to whether you're under or over, you have to kind of give an explanation of like why that is and what is the action you're going to take with it. We've also moved to weekly meetings with clients, or weekly, I don't even call them, I call them check-ins or feedback loops. I don't really like to call them reporting because it's very sort of actionable on what's happening on the ground right now. And I think for me, also keeps everybody really accountable. So within our sheet, during the week, things might come up and just added to the talking point tab. And then we have an action list tab as well that gets put on that. So we don't necessarily have to, at the end of the month, say that this is all the work that was done because it has been spoken about sort of each week. What we found for our paid media specialists is the first week of the month, they're so busy putting reports together, it's almost like miss out on a week of actually doing work. And what we found is that sometimes new campaigns have to be built during the first week, and then there's reporting week where a new client comes on board. And so that first week was really, really difficult for people. So by moving to weeklies, we found that we've just got a better cadence and feedback loop with our clients, as well as taking the pressure off of that first week of suddenly having to spend so much time putting reports together. So yeah, that's worked well for us.
Thanks for sharing. What about you guys? Dwayne?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, every agency has a different way to do things. Some do weekly meetings, some do bi-weekly, some do monthly. Obviously, it all depends on like what the client wants. Some clients don't want to meet weekly because they've got too much stuff. We're going to have a call before this meeting, but a client canceled. This client pretty much cancels every monthly call. Like there's always something going on in their world. But to answer your question, I think, our reporting comes in kind of 4 ways. So there's the monthly report I mentioned earlier, which is written. We've got a monthly call we do with clients. You know, if you're spending 75, 100K a month, we'll do like a meeting every 2 weeks. And so our meetings are a little bit different in that we don't go over reporting. We try to use our meetings more for collaboration. So what's going on in the business, you know, i.e. one client just bought another company. How does that impact what we're going to do? Is there some sort of sale promotion we're doing next month? In Toronto, there's a big festival this coming weekend in my neighborhood of town. Are we going to run an ad within like 1 mile of the festival to promote the store? So we try to use the calls for collaboration with clients to understand like what's going on their end of the business, what's changing, especially if our point of contact's like the marketing person and we don't know what's going on with other people in marketing, or we don't know what's going on with other people in the team. And so, yeah, we've got the monthly call, we've got the monthly report. And then the two other things we do is we basically have a paid media report. So it's just a Google sheet. We use Supermetrics, just pulls in the data from, you know, Google, Meta, whatever. It breaks down performance weekly, monthly. Clients can look at that, you know, Monday, 7, 8 a.m., whenever it gets updated to see sort of how, you know, last week went, how month to date went, and stuff like that. And then this year we built out Looker Studio. Now, I hate Looker Studio, but some of the team built out a really nice Looker Studio report. And that basically breaks down Google down from, you know, like match types in Google to like where's money getting spent on different Google networks to, you know, some clients are in multiple countries. So like what countries getting most of the spend this week, this month. And I think some clients really like the Looker Studio because it's very granular and they can change like the date ranges to figure out like why is there a change this week versus last week or this month versus last month. And so those ways have sort of helped us report in different ways because some clients like Looker Studio, so that's there. Some clients like Google Sheets, that's there. And if clients don't read either of those two things, well, we'll talk with them on the monthly call and we have the monthly report to get it. And so depending on what client wants, they'll have all four. Some clients will just use one or two. And so I think, like I said earlier, try to have a report that sort of clients can understand and read. And we found these four seem to be the best combination that retain clients, but also not have it where, you know, we're in 30-minute meetings every week or in, you know, hour-long meetings every week. Because I have some friends who are in 30-minute meetings every week or they're hour-long meetings every week. And I'm like, how do you get any work done? Like if you spend 1 to 2 days a week on meetings, when does work get done for you?
Yeah. No, but I think, yeah, that was the best combination which you found so far. I think that there's going to be the time when you're going to test the better one. Not going to mention the name. I think it's obvious. But yeah, thanks for sharing. I think that's a great setup, of course. And I think I love that multiple, you know, agents have way different ways, especially not about like tool set. I think tool set is one, but I think the workflows and especially like, for example, Chantel has, you know, weekly meetings, which I love. I think this is like proactivity thing, which helps me a lot, you know, in the especially I think relationship part. But again, you know, Dwayne, I remember, you know, you mentioned that, you know, like weekly calls maybe would be intense, but I also hear that, you know, you do a lot of work for your customers, right? So you do a bit of a market insights as well, you know, suggestions. So I think that there's still a big intensity and proactivity happening from your side. So yeah, I think that's nice. I think that's one good thing. What I would love to take out as well. You know, just providing a bit more wider context about things as a suggestions rather than just, you know, reporting on metrics. All right, thanks. And Maiva, I think SEO is very much interesting to report on and track. So what do you guys use? Is it native or?
Pardon?
Is it native on the SEO platforms, or is it more like, you know, something what you guys built?
I would say it's probably less sophisticated. Right now we have a Google Slides, and then we go and grab screenshots from. It's very manual, but we're setting up Google Looker Studio right now. So I'm hoping that that's going to make it a little bit easier. I think we experimented with Looker Studio a while back and nobody liked it. The person who had set it up left and everybody was like, ugh, I don't know how to deal with this. So we didn't go back to it, but now we're coming back to it.
Yeah.
We have 3 different reporting cadences. I do also like to both avoid having too many calls and not going over too much reporting in call that they could just look at a report. I'd rather talk about strategy, roadmap, those kind of things. We have a weekly, very, very, very simple report, like 2 sentences where we say, oh, these pages made it to position 1, or we appeared in AI overview. this and that. And then we also have the strategic path email every Monday where I explain to them, this is what we're working on this week. This is why, blah, blah, blah. Then every month we have the report that right now we're piecing together on Google Slide deck. And this includes all the things reporting against the goals, etc. It's quite manual at the moment, but that's why we're now implementing Looker Studio. Then every quarter we do a quarterly business review. And in this, which I do what Dwayne also mentioned, is that here's what we've done, except we look at it on a quarterly basis because it's slower. So we say, last quarter we had this 90-day milestone. Here's what we did or what we were able to actually execute. Sometimes there's a lot of roadblocks to actually executing. Here were the results of the last 90 days before that. We did another content audit of what has changed, another competitor analysis to see what they have been doing over the quarter. And then we go back through our technical audit. We don't necessarily always redo a technical audit, but we go back and say, because a lot of the time it's the client who wants to implement those kind of things and we're not actually allowed to go in there. So it's more of like an accountability check-in and say, what progress have you made on this? And then in there, so it's not just a report, but it's also looking forward and say, okay, based on all this data, here's what I would like the next 90-day milestone to be. And that we do walk through on a call. I try to get not only my contacts person, but their leadership on the call as well, because that really helps me gain clarity on the strategy. I find that sometimes the POC has one interpretation of the company business strategy. And if I bring somebody else on, I understand a different interpretation of it and I can ask more questions and gain more clarity that way. So we do those kind of reportings. And then we also have weekly internal reporting at the leadership meeting every week where we kind of go over each client. We don't have a huge amount of clients, so it's still doable at the size that we have now. I did wonder if we got a bunch of clients, it would take a lot of time to get through this, but at the number that we have now, since they're higher ticket B2B clients, we are able to go through all of them in the meeting. And that's where we can look at not only tasks, but also performance. And when I say task, is another mistake that I can bring up is one time I can't remember how I realized, to be honest, but it came to my attention that it had not come to my attention before, that we were 3 to 4 months delayed across the majority of our clients in publishing. And the delays weren't necessarily all our fault. It was the client's delay in getting approvals or this reason or that reason. But somehow that had never come up in conversation. Everybody just assumed that I would know that. So it was that was a big part of our weekly reporting, is content published on time, content produced on time, because produced and published, 2 different KPIs. And now we look at that weekly as well, so that we can immediately see if something was not being done on time, and we'll never get back to another 4-month delay, which was a disaster to catch up to.
Yeah, I can imagine. I think, because what I think it's also heard here, there's a multiple different setups, what you guys run, and it depends again on the agency setup. But still, I think what I reflect a bit is still there's a lot of weekly check-ins, rather that's customer check-ins or internal check-ins. But I see that everyone still does the weekly leadership, at least check-ins on the pacing on the customer side. And I heard as well, there's multiple use cases. So Chantal uses more of a Whatagraph and some sheets, and Maiva uses sheets and slides and Looker Studio currently, and Dwayne Looker Studio and sheets. So I think that's a very traditional setups most of the time. And I think also what I've heard from you, Maiva, that I think Looker Studio tends to be the thing which is kind of, if it has a supervisor, then it's great. If the supervisor leaves, then it's a bit of a terrible place. But hopefully that's gonna solve. And I think that's a very small product placement of ours. I think it's also great that we can cover all the ends on that, so we can do both and goal tracking within Whatagraph, and we can do as well Looker Studio. You can still build reports as well there, and there's very plenty of flexibility. And I think the goals part, especially, which is just launched, what Chantal mentioned. So with our goals, you're able to actually be on track with the goals you set with the customer, and then of course get notified over email or Slack, and soon actually Teams. So basically in the places where you work, you would be able to get a very timely notifications if something goes a bit wrong and under pacing, and then there will be of course a suggestion what should be done and changed in to catch up on the goals. All right. So I think we have covered already a bit of what kind of problems you guys face, how you solve them, and the tool sets. And I think what would be a great takeaway for everyone also to take out how you manage the change throughout your customer base and your team. I think that's a bit of a mindset shift also needs to happen when your team especially needs to be more proactive. I know from one of our customers that they even have a mandatory requirement, that every team member needs to work with a certain way of reporting, and everything needs to be tracked in one place, and then pushed over to the customer on a specific day. They should have also a meeting every once in a while, and how that's done in your companies. And would be also interesting, to hear how you manage to do that mindset shift of being a proactive and transparent with the customers.
I'm happy to start. So I think firstly with clients, or let's go with the easy one, new clients. We basically put the expectation out from the start. So we say like, these are going to be our expectations of you. Like for this to work, this is why we need you to come to the party. And it's kind of a way of also qualifying whether it's the right client for us or not. In regards to the sort of our paid media specialists, the buy-in was just really around like we do whatever we can to make your life easier. And so the shift from monthly to weekly is probably the biggest shift, because now they go, wow, like now I have to have these, let's say 5 weekly meetings of half an hour each. But when we could show them that it was going to reduce the sort of that first week and take that sort of pain away, as well as showing them that it reduces emails back and forth and things like that. Like we actually had to buy in really quickly when we went through our new client sheets with them and just took them through an example. Or we actually found out the example didn't work well when we took them through one of their clients on a client sheet. It sort of stuck for them. So it was like really relative to them, and we could use like a real life example with them. So that's how we got the buy-in. And yeah, so far so good. But we generally have quite a big feedback loop with everybody that we work with all the time. So when we say we are going to be working on this, like want to just ask you a few questions, like what do you think of this? What do you think of that? And so because they're involved in the process of building the process, it's buy-in.
Yeah, I think that's a very thorough, process what you guys have done, and I love especially that setting the right expectation with the customer in the first place. It's I think that for me, I think somehow that stuck the most in general. I think that the whole process is being managed as well, very well, and I think it also applies to different industries, as we also do that within Whatagraph. And once we onboard the customers, we always want to understand what is the main goal, what do you want to achieve, and there's like multiple different ways how to do it, and what everyone is looking for, right? So even in our case, it might look like everyone wants to set up reporting, but sometimes it's just way different expectations, and once you know them, I think it's easier to work with the customer. And Dwayne, would love to hear your point of view on this one.
Yeah, I think a process on any team, whether you work in an agency or internally, is always a challenge. One of that process is like you got to repeat things. You're probably not going to just say it once or twice. You probably have to repeat it a couple of times, which is fine. But I think when it comes to like net new clients, we have this new Looker Studio report we've been doing the last 4 or 5 months. So, net new clients will just get it within the first 2 or 3 weeks, if it's a brand new account, we may need to spend some money first before the report, actually has data in it. If it's a client who's been running ads for the last couple of years, they'll still probably just get the report, 2 weeks in. We try not to send all 3 reports at the same time because it's probably too much data, too many reports. We try to space out the reporting over the first month or 2, so clients sort of get their feet wet on these different reports that we're going to get from us. And then old clients, we kind of phase it in. So we phased in the Looker Studio report over Q1 with clients. And so again, everyone in the team, you have to get it to your clients by this date. You can pick which order you want to send it to your clients, but all your clients need to get it. And then each client gets a nice little email that says, here's a new report we made. Here's what you can do with the report. Here's how it works. And then if you have any questions, let us know. And then I think just really following up with people, making sure, did we send the report? Did the clients have any questions? Do clients not like it? Using that feedback to help make the report better overall. And then just repeat. I've learned as a team manager, whether it's an agency now or before, you're going to have to repeat things over and over. That's just the nature of the job, and that's fine. So we just try to phase things over and just repeat things over and over.
Yeah, I think sometimes that's our job, right? When we're providing services, so everyone takes their time, to learn those things. Thanks for sharing. Maiva, and what about you? How you manage the shift in general?
Yeah, so I have to say that my team was actually pretty excited about setting this up and learning all of it. There was not any pushback at all. They were very interested in how they might make it better. I have to say, even to the point where our senior client account manager, Eva, she was the one who did a big push on improving the quality of the reports. So not necessarily how easy it is to make them, but the quality and are we delivering what the clients want from this? So she actually took the initiative to go to each of the clients and have them, I think, either fill out a form, or she was interviewing them, but what do you need to see in the reports? And she even asked them, can I see the reports that you give to your leadership? And then we'll see if we can bring our reports to where you don't really have to make any other edits. And that was a really good project. And she kind of led that to get the reports to the Google slide format that we have now, which is really good and delivering on what the clients want. It is still quite manual, so I'm trying to figure that out with Looker Studio, how we can balance those two. But she led that on her own initiative, and the clients were very much involved in it. So they knew that we were working on a new reporting format, and they were really excited about it because we not only got their buy-in, but we got their involvement in how to shape it and how to make sure that we were actually making their job easier. And that was the goal of it. So it was all super collaborative, and I didn't really find difficulty rolling it out for this time.
There was a great point there. It's amazing when you actually listen to, I guess, your contacts at the company and what their pain point is. One of the things that really stresses them out is, I've got to present to the board. I hear that one, and totally stresses them out, and the board doesn't really understand digital, whatever the case is. And so we actually started creating basically a board report, which all it was just a duplicate of the other report, and then it was just dumbed down, just deleted a whole lot of the graphs and just made it super simple. And now with Whatagraph having the different tabs at the top, what we've done over there is we've actually created a tab for the different people. So we know the CEO goes in and he looks at the CEO tab and he can take a look at that, but the marketing manager might want to go look at a lot more detail. So we've basically done that for them, which has also really, really helped. Yeah, because we're just essentially duplicating either a widget or a report, it actually doesn't take any extra time, but adds so much value, and also saves our, let's say, the marketing manager or coordinator or whatever, a lot of time on what they've got to do on their side. So yeah, it was also just listening to the pain point.
That's nice. Actually, I never thought about that. I think it's also great to have tabs or different reports for different people because everyone does per channel or per campaign, and I think doing it by person, I think also nice takeaway. That's great. Actually, I think one of our upcoming features is going to be very great on that. I think that's a bit linked with AI, but yeah. So we'll see. I think we'll have another webinar on this one. So hopefully to share very soon on this one.
Can we put in a prompt of like, please dumb down this report for the board?
Yeah. So basically, that's going to be very close to that. So just a small teaser. So nobody will need to build reports anymore. So hopefully that's where we're going. So don't get very wild on Looker for now. so that might get redundant very soon. Yeah, thanks. All right, so I think it would be great to hold some questions as I see our time is running out. So maybe you have any questions in. So I see one in the chat. But yeah, please, if someone has a question, just drop it in the chat. Or you can also find these guys in LinkedIn and I think ask the questions directly. But there's a question from Katie. I'm wondering which KPIs would you absolutely set an alert for, no matter what? That's, I think, a great question. I think it's very different, right, from each of you.
Yeah, it's not going to be the same. It depends on what service you're offering.
So SEO, what would you say, Maiva?
I don't have any alerts.
But what would you set as as a must-have if you would do that?
I think I would set clicks to the key pages that we're working on as an alert. I might have to think about this a little. I'm trying to think about what things I was like, oh no, and I didn't notice.
Yeah.
If there's any like sudden drops, any sudden drops, that would be something I would want to notice immediately, like unusual drops or something like that.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, thanks. What about you, Dwayne?
Yeah, I mean, outside of making sure like Google or Meta can charge the credit card and we're spending money, just as a base level. Really depends on the client's KPIs. It could be the CPA, could be the ACost, it could be the ROAS. So making sure it's not above or below sort of the range we want. And that's kind of what we look at. So we look at ad accounts every day, and then we especially look at them on Mondays for the past week. And as long as those numbers sort of are where they need to be on any given day of the week or any given day of the day of that week, we're fine. So usually just goes back to whatever one number the client wants, whether it's CPA, ROAS, or ACost again.
Nice. So ROAS, CPA, and then so very traditional PPC KPIs basically.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Of course, I mean that's obvious of it, right? What about you, Chantal?
I think similar to Dwayne, so definitely budget. What we want to know is the pacing on budget is really important for us. And then one thing that's just come up late is just sometimes tracking breaking. Like we'll have tracking in place and then a client goes and does an update on their website or like removes a GTM tag or something ridiculous like that. And then you sort of only maybe pick it up a little bit later. So anything that would be able to tell us that would most likely be sort of like traffic. But then, like Dwayne said, whatever the client's particular sort of KPIs, a lot of time for all of our e-commerce clients, there will definitely be revenue. So they'll be wanting to get a certain amount of revenue per month. And we like to look at overall revenue because we know that sort of all channels kind of play together. So that is one thing that we would look at. And maybe there's a particular channel KPI as well. But again, like want to know if we're underpacing or overpacing, so where we might have to focus things.
And adjust.
We'll jump on a call.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Thanks. So I see that there is another question about alerts and etc. So I think that would be, I think those as well, as you guys mentioned, that would be alerts as well for you. But minding the time, could you please share one takeaway from the whole of this conversation? What would you want to leave everyone after this session?
I have one. I would say set really, really clear goals and repeat them over and over again to make sure that not only the account manager and everybody on the account knows what they are and can tell whether everything they're doing is working towards those goals, and keep repeating it to the client and keep making sure that they're aligned with it. That's and that whoever they report to is aligned with it.
Very well put. Chantel, what about you?
Oh, that was stolen. I was going to say that one.
That's why Maeva went first, I guess.
For us, biggest game changer has been the weekly check-in. I know it's a lot of work, but it has just saved us so many back and forth emails and saved us from having to be putting out fires because the fires don't start. So I think for us that's been the key game changer.
Lovely. I love it.
Yeah, I think what I would say is, ironically, I think when we look at this conversation, if you're watching this, like whatever you come up with is probably going to be crap. The first version will just not be great, and you've got to like iterate on it, whether it's internally in your team or with your client, and get better and better. If I look at my first proposal I did 8 years ago, I should be ashamed of myself versus what we do today. And it's same with reporting. The first thing will be crap, but you'll get better, and it'll look better, and it'll be able to communicate better with clients. So you have to just like give yourself permission to not make something beautiful the first time, and then iterate on it to make it better over time. Communication improves over time, and your report should be no different.
Lovely. I think that's a very well summarized. I think, like 3 great takeaways. Set goals. Be proactive and talk about them with the customers. Very much focus on at as frequent as possible. I would put it this way. I think for Chantel it works weekly, but for others it works monthly and quarterly. It depends on the situation which agency is at. But I think as frequently as possible, it helps to have a very good relationship with the customers, and most likely have them for a long time. And I think what just Dwayne mentioned, just don't be afraid to fail in the first goes. That's most likely going to happen, but you keep on iterating and changing according to the feedback from your customers and yourself, and that's going to be great. So yeah, so thanks guys really for sharing your thoughts. I think that's a lot of great ideas, and I think everyone will find something to take out. And yeah, if you find this talk interesting, so tune up for other coming up. And of course, please follow our great guys. They share way more on LinkedIn, and you can definitely find valuable content over there. So yeah, thank you again for participating, and yeah, and thanks everyone for listening for this conversation.